Hey, what's up everybody? cmdrradix here bringing you another video. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna talk about, I know it's your favorite subject, books. Reading. La intelligentsia. So, throughout my time here on YouTube, I've made several videos talking about the importance of reading, or at least the importance of reading good literature. I have consistently critiqued the idea of fandom. I've gone towards the idea that modern fiction can often be bad, and I have encouraged people to read more, just as the first level, but also read more books, more better books, blah blah blah. I don't think I've actually made a video fully dedicated to my philosophy of reading, so I might have to do that another day. That's a different subject than for this video. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Ho ho ho, should I say. Bruh. Is that a Phrygian cap? This is like the most janky Santa hat I've ever got. It's December 22nd, by the way, when I'm recording this. On my x.com, at cmdrradix. Please follow me if you aren't following me there already. It's wild, it's traumatizing. But I keep up something that I started last year called #RadixReads. Last year it was #RadixReads 2024. This year it's been Radix Reads 2025. Who would have thought? Hold on, the US Air Force is flying above my apartment. Okay, I think we're good. But I do that to sort of help encourage a culture of reading, especially for people who are chronically online like myself. It's good to take a break and read a book a little while, and I wasn't able to read as much as I wanted to read this year, partly because of my reflux esophagitis making it very hard for me to focus on reading. Check out my video, What Was Up with 2025, for more talk on that. But I was able to read a few books, a lot of essays, a lot of shorter books, but every now and then a full-sized book. And today, I think, sort of as an addendum to #RadixReads, and sort of to continue my mission of trying to get more people to read, I'm going to do a sort of video. Maybe this will be an annual spectacular, who knows? But I'm going to make a video here today talking about my favorite books that I read in 2025. Now, I don't know what I titled this video. To get some disambiguation out of the way, this is not a video about the best books published in 2025 that I read in 2025. This isn't about the best books published in 2025. This is about my favorite books that I read in 2025. Very rarely do I read a book that has a published date that starts with the number 2. Moving on. So, I read, if I look at my count, I read about 52 books this year. Now, keep in mind that I put like pretty important research journal articles and essays as well under my reading list, so these aren't full-scale books. I don't think there's anything wrong with reading essays and reading research articles or whatever, so that's why I count them, but don't think that this is like, oh, Radix read 52 full-sized books. I didn't actually read that many full-sized books. A lot of these are short stories. But hey, if you're reading something, then you're getting away from the screen, and I think that's what matters. Reading helps develop your ability to focus, to develop the ability to be alone with your thoughts to some extent, not as much as like meditation or something, but it's an important skill. It's an important practice to have in the modern world. My light went off. Why did this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run, the night goes on as I'm fading away. I'm going to go sort of in chronological order, not necessarily in the order they impacted me, which is bad because it's kind of an inverse order. But the first book I'm going to bring up today is also my favorite book that I read in 2025, and that is The Romantic Revolution, A History by Tim Blanning. I read this from January 5th to January 9th, 2025, and whoo boy, that was a great book. That was a paradigm-shifting book for me. You know, every now and then you encounter a piece of literature or a piece of media that sort of opens gateways to places that you've never been to, that you've never really explored before. For example, we've all had our history classes in school. When I was in high school and in college, my history classes, I majored in history, basically, by the way. My classes basically started from around the time of the Black Death, around the 1300s, and moved forward from there. Which, is unfortunate, because there's a lot that happens before the 1300s that I think is worth knowing. I don't think your understanding of the world should start with the 1300s. Case in point, I'm a bit of a medievalist. I like the medieval world probably the most out of any period in history insofar as ideas are concerned. But the Roman Empire and ancient antiquity, classical antiquity, I basically knew nothing of that going through high school and going through college. Wow, going through university without understanding the classical world. I don't even think you can call that an education. But weirdly enough, it was a YouTube web series called The Unbiased History of Rome that gave me a bit of a touch point to start to understand the classical world. Even though it's not meant to be a fully historically accurate series, it was a project by someone who loved the Roman Empire and the classical world. And it does open up some gates. It gives me some concepts that I can work with and let me explore the classical world more. Dova Hattie's Unbiased History of Rome opened up a whole new area of study for me. Likewise, the Romantic Revolution opened up a whole nother period of study for me. As a sort of traditionalist, as a bit of a traditionalist conservative, I always took the position that modernity sucks, and the modernity is basically what flows from the Enlightenment, and the Enlightenment sucks, and everything after the Enlightenment has been bad. And I stand by that. I stand by that point. However, what I wasn't really aware of that much was the sort of counter-Enlightenment and anti-Enlightenment forces that happened during the Enlightenment, and where those forces kind of flowed into history. And you see, like, yeah, modernity and Enlightenment ideas do sort of infect that counter-Enlightenment strand to some extent. But you do sort of get to realize what happened to the traditionalist, what happened to the original right that dialectically opposed the incoming left, the incoming Enlightenment during like the French Revolution or whatever. What happened to them? And the Romantic Revolution, I always focused my study on, anti-Enlightenment thought as basically being, the medieval period and before, and understanding that worldview. And that is probably the best way to understand counters to the Enlightenment, in so much as it's not dialectical. But the Romantic Revolution was my first step into the world of the anti-Enlightenment and counter-Enlightenment strains within modernity, within the context of modernity. And I'm a strong believer that tradition, is a principle, and that principle can be applied and look differently when it enters into temporal history. It's just, I understood the traditional principles before the Enlightenment. I didn't really see those traditional principles applied after the Enlightenment, and the Romantic Revolution really helps me to see it a little bit more clearly. Not saying that the Romanticists were like the paragon of traditionalist thought, but you do get to see more traditional principles that run contrary to the Enlightenment and how they're applied within a world in which the Enlightenment has happened, and I think that's really interesting. Reading this book has opened me up to understanding the Romantic movement, yes, but everything that flows after the Romantic movement. It really helps me understand a lot of things like agrarianism, traditionalist conservatism, which is the political strain I tend to follow. It helps me to understand a lot of the neo-romantics. It helps me understand more about the context, background, and tradition that people like the Inklings, J.R.R. Tolkien, and C.S. Lewis were sort of flowing out of. It got me to really understand, the modern concept of the fairy tale. This book was mind-blowing. It was my favorite book of 2025. I should probably end the video here. But yeah, it really opened up the modern world in a different way than I had previously seen it. So, fantastic book, excellent book. I could see myself rereading it in 2026, to be honest, going in and taking more detailed notes on the Romantic Revolution. The next book that I really liked that I read in 2025 was the Tao Te Ching. Now, I typically pronounce it Dao De Jing, but the cover of this book particularly was Tao Te Ching. So, the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I don't remember the translator. It was the same translator that PewDiePie recommended at the beginning of 2025. Which is funny because I've received like 2 more copies of the Tao Te Ching, or the Tao Te Ching, from I think a different translator. I got this book for my birthday, and it includes the Tao Te Ching in it, the Tao Te Ching in it, and I think it's a different translation. I want to read it through that translation. But the Tao Te Ching, I'm just going to call it the Tao Te Ching, that's what I'm used to. The Tao Te Ching is a great book. It is the foundation for understanding Eastern civilization, for understanding China in particular, but also that sort of becomes key to understanding Mahayana Buddhism. I think it becomes key to understanding Korean, Japanese, Okinawan, Vietnamese, the Sinosphere cultures. It's really a foundational book. It's also the book that begins the tradition of Taoism, or Taoism, if you want to be fancy. And Taoism is a very intriguing religio-philosophico ideology to me. I'm a big fan of the book Christ the Eternal Tao, which sort of looks at how Taoism points to the incarnation of Christ, points to the church. That's another book I'd recommend for studying Taoism from a Christian perspective. And that book kind of shapes my framework to approaching Taoism. A few essays by René Guénon on Taoism and Confucianism also shape how I approach Taoism. But the Tao Te Ching, in and of itself, has a lot of wisdom in it. It's very good. It's very esoteric in that its meanings, it's meant to be written in such a broad, vague way, but it's meant to be a text that's read sort of meditatively, contemplatively, not meant to be like a super literal thing, but it's a very important text. It opens up the world to understand. It opens you up to understanding a lot of the East, a lot of Mahayana Buddhism, for example, and so I think it's very important. It's really hard to talk about the Tao Te Ching, though, because it is sort of, meant to be something that's very... You can't really talk about it. I mean, let me read. This is Book 11, The Use of What Has No Substantive Existence. The 30 spokes unite in the one nave, but it is on the empty space, for the axle, that the use of the wheel depends. Clay is fashioned into vessels, but it is on their empty hollowness that their use depends. The door and windows are cut out from the walls to form an apartment, but it is on the empty space within that its use depends. Therefore, what has a positive existence serves for profitable adaptation, and what has not that for actual usefulness. We must remember that a bowl is most useful when it is empty, to quote epic rap battles of history. Which is true. This is sort of one of the key concepts behind hesychasm in the Orthodox tradition. And we are getting off topic for the purpose of this video. Read the Tao Te Ching. It's important. It's a good book. It's one of those things that let the reader understand sort of book, but it's a great book. Let's move on. This also wasn't the first year I've read the Tao Te Ching. This is probably the first year that I read the Tao Te Ching with a more Orthodox Christian understanding of it. The next thing I want to recommend, this is more of an essay than a book, but I read Tradition and the Individual Talent by T.S. Eliot. I read that on February 6th. I read that, and then I made my video, What is Tradition? Right, I'm trying to shape a philosophy of what tradition is. T.S. Eliot's Tradition, I think, was really good in that it sort of made clear a sort of concept that I already had in the back of my head, which was that tradition isn't a dead thing. It's not something that exists only in the past, but tradition is a living, flowing thing, and that as a writer, you can write within the tradition, or you cannot write within the tradition, and really it's only worth writing in the tradition if you're trying to write something substantial. Big fan of T.S. Eliot's perspective on tradition. It runs parallel and complementary to my own view of tradition. In fact, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily two different strands of the idea of tradition. But I would say more, but I made a video on this essay anyway. What is tradition? So go check out that video for me to explore more of that concept. But I really liked it. I love it when people reference the fact that tradition isn't a dead thing in the past, but a living thing that continues into the present, that changes, right? Changes in its external forms, but not in its essential forms, its essential ideas. Getting a little bit Platonic there, but and also a little bit perennialist there. But I really liked T.S. Eliot's tradition and the individual talent. It also has sort of changed my own perspective on how I make art, how I make things. I put a lot more thought into like the fonts I use on this channel and the music choice on this channel and why I make those choices. What is the history and traditions that these things come from? I'm more conscious of that since reading that book, although I've also been conscious about it even before that. The next book I want to mention is The Courage to Be Disliked: How to Free Yourself, Change Your Life, and Achieve Real Happiness by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. I read that from March 22nd to March 27th. Really, I didn't read it. I listened to it on an audiobook while I went on walks. I have a complicated relationship with this book. This book is probably the most, if you look up book recommendations or self-help book recommendations, it's probably on there beside How to Win Friends and Influence People or whatever. It is, to some extent, modern slop, modern psychological slop. However, I should add that I disagree vehemently with a lot of the stuff said in that book. The whole framework of the book, I disagree with. It starts with this idea that, people used to believe in religion, and then they were all happy forever. And then they realized religion was false, and then they became sad, but now we have to figure out how to be happy again. I disagree with that whole setup completely. That is a bunch of bull crap. The old wise man who talks to the young boy in the book consistently says, yes, I have studied Greek philosophy. And then it's like, what do you mean Greek philosophy? Do you mean Plato? Do you mean Aristotle? Who are you talking? What's Greek philosophy? There's so much in Greek philosophy, you can't really say, the teachings of Greek philosophy, you say. That's the easiest way to tell that this person has no idea what they're talking about. But, that being said, there were a lot of key ideas from that book that I really liked that were sort of brain chemistry altering, as they say. The idea that it really goes into a problem I was having about being a people pleaser. And I was very much a people pleaser, and to some extent I still am, but that is a good way to live your life in an unhappy way. This book, I guess I could say, opened up the door for me to explore what would eventually bring me towards Christian existentialism a little bit more, Soren Kierkegaard a little bit more. I think a lot of the ideas in this book, most of its bad ideas and the good ideas can be found in other places, and probably better places. But it did get me thinking about some ideas and took me to the better places to think about these ideas more clearly. Yes, people-pleasing is bad, but that comes down to, from a Christian perspective, serving the created rather than the creator, which of course isn't the angle this book took it. Yes, people are going to dislike you, but you shouldn't be I don't know. There's a lot of caveats I have with this book. But some key ideas that I will explore through better sources later on include the idea that there will always be people who dislike you no matter what. Don't take it personally. That's sort of been a big deal for me, especially being more in my quest to be more authentic on YouTube and in my social media presence and in my real life, which is something I talked about a lot in my Substack articles and in a few of my videos here on YouTube, starting in 2025. It also was helpful. I do get caught up in this dichotomy of strict routine that ends up killing my soul because I can't do anything because of my strict routines that, schedule out every minute of my day, and also not being completely unrestrained from any sort of routine or schedule to the point where life feels meaningless and it's just one moment after the other with no direction in mind. I really liked how this book described life as a dance, and I think it could be a Christianized concept about life as a dance with God. But that was a big idea that really helped me a lot, because I struggle a lot with routine versus no routine. living in the moment versus living in the future. And I do have a tendency to live in the future, but if I live in the moment, then I lose sight of the future. This book's take on sort of this dance of life, this spiral. A dance is neither strictly controlled, nor is it completely free form. Life as a dance is an interesting idea. I wasn't able to really think through a lot of these concepts because then my reflux esophagitis symptoms got even worse, and then I was just I was just here. I was just existing without my mind being present for a while. But it is something that I want to explore a bit more, and I think this book helped open up more of Soren Kierkegaard, what Soren Kierkegaard means in his philosophy. I read Soren Kierkegaard last year, but I think reading The Courage to Be Disliked prepared me more to understand Soren Kierkegaard a little bit better. It's hard for me to say that I recommend this book because there are better sources, better areas, but I do think this book had a big influence in some of my thinking going into 2025. Then I have Anxiety, How It Is Created and How It Is Healed by Archimandrite Simeon Kragiopoulos. I listened to that March 31st. I listened to the audiobook version, the reading that Thaddeus Patrick did on his channel, which is good because it's an orthodox take on the problem of anxiety, and I suffer from anxiety like a madman. I was diagnosed with social anxiety back when I was in high school. You can tell that in March I was really working on mental health type stuff, but it was a good book, short book. You can listen to it. You can listen to Thaddeus Patrick reading it, but it deals with anxiety from an Orthodox Christian perspective. And it's better than, bro, you're just not trusting Jesus enough, man. It goes a few steps beyond that to understanding a Christian perspective on anxiety, and I really appreciated that. So that was a good book. That was a book that I'm glad that I listened to at least in 2025. I don't think I've been able to really apply a lot of the lessons learned from that book yet, but I'll definitely be coming back to it again and again in the future. Now, those were my main, I have a list of the books I read in 2025, and I put little stars beside them. And those stars, that finishes up the stars. You might have noticed that I finished in March, which means from March to December. It wasn't brain chemistry altering books. But those are my main top books from 2025 that I read. Maybe I'll also note what books I'm reading right now. I have been reading Plato's Republic for the first time. You can see my bookmark here, which is a full piece of paper. But I've been reading through the Republic. I'm on book 4 of the Republic right now. It's been fun. I've been really wanting to get more into political theory, especially classical and medieval political theory, aka non-Enlightenment political theory. So Plato's Republic seemed like a good start for that. Plato's Republic seems to be an essential text for the Western tradition, so that's also part of the reason why I'm reading it. I can't really call myself educated or call myself an intellectual without having read Plato's Republic, so I'm reading that. And also, Plato's Republic is kind of big, kind of a lot of ideas. I'm taking a break with Plato's Republic. Right now, I'm reading Gregory Smith's The Ryukyu Islands, A New History from the Stone Age to the Present. Gregory Smith has been my favorite historian with Okinawan history, with Ryukyuan history. He seems to be the only person in the English language that is taking the subject seriously instead of just accepting court documents, court official histories from the 1600s at face value. He's made a lot of fantastic discoveries, or at least broke fantastic discoveries in the English language about Okinawan history. As someone who's part Okinawan and lives in Okinawa, he is my go-to historian for Ryukyuan history, and he published that book just a few weeks ago, and I'm reading through it. It's mostly a synthesis of his previous books, but that's good because I've taken notes all over his previous books, and they're always like all over the place. It feels like a conspiracy theory board with rubber bands and strings tied to everything. So it's nice to see this book, which is a more synthesized version of his previous books altogether. Okinawan history is fascinating, by the way. It's also an understudied field of history. I highly recommend, especially if you're interested in history, if you're interested in East Asia, if you're interested in Japan and China, do take a look at Gregory Smith's Okinawan history books. They're really, really good. And not enough people know about Okinawan history. I'm scared about making Okinawan history videos on this channel because I don't know if I'll be doxxed. those are my favorite books I read in 2025. Hopefully I'll be able to do a similar video in 2026. I will be keeping up my reading habits into 2026. And hopefully I'll find more paradigm-shifting, brain chemistry-altering books, because that's the most fun experience of reading in my experience. I said experience twice there. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, what were some of your favorite books of 2025? Let me know in the comment section below. But that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching. Follow me on social media. Subscribe to this channel if you have not yet. And thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen.